Man, I am late. I am sorry. What's going on? This is Travis Witherspoon from Carter Cow Capital, helping you fight for your financial freedom throughout the forex market. Today is Thursday. I have 8:07 p.m. The market has just opened up, and we're about to see Jerome Powell end up speaking at 9 o'clock. This is going to end up being a very brief session, obviously, in the morning, so you end up going through and taking a look at opportunities, but also I got to get my boys out to school. So we'll go ahead and get everything situated. We'll talk about We'll talk about what's going on with the market. I'm personally not going to make a move until after Jerome Powell ends up speaking at 9 o'clock. So if you're looking to be able to say, "Hey, I'm just interested to be able to take a trade right now," I'm probably not going to end up taking a trade right now because I don't want to. I want to be able to know for certain what's going to happen with the move. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm not a CTA, so I'm not going to tell you whether to buy or to sell. What I'm going to do is teach you education, and from the education, you can be able to make your own informed decision. I understand that trading involves risk. It involves risk of being able to make money. Also involves risk of being able to lose money. So please keep that in mind. And understand that past performance is not indicative of future results, which means that if you end up making money yesterday, it's not promised that you end up making money today. So with that being said, as we go through, take a look at the charts, take a look at what's going to end up happening in 22 minutes. That will end up being another precursor of what's happening for us, unemployment and everything else. And then after that, Chair Powell's going to end up speaking at 9:10. Because this is so irregular, this has me a little bit more on high alert. And because it has me on high alert, that means to me that I'm probably not going to trade this morning until I end up seeing exactly what's going to end up happening. Okay, so I'm just saying that in general. I'm going to talk about opportunities. Maybe there might be opportunities that already happened. Whatever may end up being the case. But for certain, I know me personally, I'm not going to end up taking a trade until I end up understanding what's happening. Um, Now, let's go ahead and go through. I'll take a look at gold real quick because the first thing ended up popping up on my screen. Obviously, gold has been in consolidation. We're seeing that the market is starting to pop up a little bit. That would kind of spell that what's happening with the overall marketplace is that the market is actually falling when it comes down to the United States. I end up saying that the United States dollar index was a little bit overbought. This may end up proving that to be true overall. If you notice, it may end up starting another consolidation that may end up happening inside of this overall area right here. So something to be able to pay attention to. I'm not personally taking a move off of this pair, at least not yet. But if I'm seeing that gold is starting to get a little bit stronger, that means that the United States dollar is going to start to get a little bit weaker. So that takes us to the United States dollar index. We take a look at what's happening with the United States dollar index. If we look at it from an early morning's perspective, the market started to retrace. That it kind of goes in line with what ended up happening with gold for us, that overall movement. Now, remember the market ended up hitting a daily D extension at 13,168. From there, the market actually ended up pushing up um, all the way up to 13,282. There's a weekly D extension out at 13,495, I believe. Currently, right now, because the market is in a sell zone, I do expect that the market will end up having a little bit of a retracement today in the next 7 to 11 days for its overall downside movement. So keep that in mind when it comes down to most of your trades. If the market ends up going down on the United States dollar index, then typically what happens is that the index pairs like US 30 and NYSE 100 typically go up. So it'll be something to be able to pay attention to when it comes down to most of those markets and how that's actually playing out. We're still in this channel. We're still kind of moving up. Not going to end up making a move for trying to sell it because I trade more with the trend compared to actually trading against it. So that is the actual move from there. Let's take a look at oil. The Canadian dollar ended up having their interest rate decision to come out yesterday. It actually ended up being 3.25. That kind of spells out what we end up talking about for this overall movement that ended up happening. We talked about a bearish crown that was particularly starting to be able to form. I said that the market could fall all the way down to 77.11 for its overall movement. Starting at the beginning of the day, I'm starting to see that movement now actually start to be able to happen. Makes a lot of sense of why it ended up happening because when you take a look at it from a daily perspective, this market was showing upward trend. It actually ended up breaking the A. Once it ended up breaking the A, it actually ended up showing a downside trend. From that downside trend, you end up taking a look at the previous trend that completed, plus the one that ended up getting broken, and that told you, or that kind of let you know where the market could potentially go. So, couple positions in particular where oil could go for this being able to sell. 77.11 would be the first one. The second one ended up being 64 dollars a barrel. And then after that, if you take a look at it from a custom field perspective, uh, market could fall all the way down to 58 or 59 if that does happen from a Fibonacci perspective for the bearish crown. So Couple areas to be able to keep in note when it comes down to that movement. Overall, I think that overall you'll probably end up finding some good opportunities to be able to look at potentially selling on this pair. So I would keep that in mind as we are going through and looking at the overall movement on this one in general. Okay, so there we go with that one. Let's take a look at the index pairs real quick. Unless anybody have any questions on that. Does anybody have any questions on that as we go through this? I am kind of jumping around here. Let's see, it's the first time I feel kind of unorganized when it comes down to these charts. Typically, I have everything situated already. Let's see. I'm going to copy this over and place this in right here. Good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and go into, we'll start off with US 30. US 30, we ended up taking a trade yesterday. I ended up exiting very early on it because I ended up noticing that the market was in consolidation. Yesterday, the market ended up having a 300-point move. And when we end up taking a look at this in our live session, I ended up talking about how the market could be able to move to the downside. And I felt like if the market gave us a counter trend line break early to be able to get out, then we'll probably have to take a short loss. That's exactly what ended up happening because I felt like the market. Everybody, give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. So took a quick loss on that. I ended up noticing that the market ended up starting to break. So what I ended up saying was I actually ended up taking a buy trade when the market ended up breaking out of the consolidation. I only took it up to what was it? I ended up taking it up to 31,330. End up making profit off of that movement, but obviously the market ended up going into a full consolidation. Full breakout, about 300 points when it came down to that move. So what ended up happening was that it ended up breaking up. Once it ended up breaking up, it ended up going into another low volume node and then actually pushing up to this area right around 31,560. So I wasn't in front of the computer to be able to make that move. It's kind of unfortunate that was the case because I really wanted to be able to make a trade off of that movement overall. Now, keep this in mind. Market is showing box consolidation. This is a good prime position of being able to take a look at a potential move that could happen. Overall, this is what I would consider to be support right here. And this is what I would consider to be the actual resistance with those two blocks right there. So you take a look at that from an overall perspective of what ended up happening over the last few weeks. This kind of matches up with what ended up happening on September 1st to September 2nd, when the market ended up having that big pop up to the upside right there. So ultimately, what I would end up wanting to be able to see is that when the market ends up making its movement, I would like to be able to catch it when the market is above 31,650, in which the market is actually starting to show a little bit of movement right now already to the upside. What is going on? What is going on? What is going on? Let's see, CNBC. Why is the market moving already? So, Queen Elizabeth doctors are concerned for health. Buckingham. Okay, that could be one thing. Bond yields. I don't think that's it. I don't see anything that will end up giving a reason why the market is already starting to be able to make a move, at least early. So I'm gonna say let's not get faked out on that. Let's still be patient enough to be able to see what's gonna end up happening at 9 o'clock once the market actually ends up, or once Jerome Powell actually ends up speaking. So we got about an hour before it actually ends up happening. But if it does break out, want to be a little bit more conservative on this one. I would say like to be able to take the buy up to where the market actually end up having that consolidation where it stopped at, which would be at 31,970. So be a little bit more patient. I'm going to say 31,950 because that was the top of the consolidation of the previous ones. Um, Stop loss on this one. I would place it below the consolidation, just like what we ended up doing yesterday. It'll be a 2.14 risk reward ratio if that does happen to the upside. Now, if it breaks down to the downside, then it's basically two scalping positions. It's going back to what end up the same trades that you end up taking yesterday, or same positions that would end up being taken yesterday, which were short position. If it does break to the downside, I will be going back to 31,416 for the actual sale with a stop loss. Um, Probably going to end up placing it just, well, you won't be able to do it from there. Probably end up being at the point of control or right above this high volume node price to be able to go from there. It'll be a lower risk reward factor if the market ends up falling to the downside. It'll be a higher risk reward factor if it ends up breaking to the upside, at least at this particular point. If you want to take it this full distance of where it ends up going, I would take two trades. I would get out at the first peak of it, and then after that, look at being able to get in once the market ends up breaking past 31,374. But once again, we're starting to get a lot of erratic movement. Don't look at jumping into the market right now. Wait till the market ends up giving you a movement to the outside to be able to make a trade from there. Jumping into it right now will probably end up putting you into a bad position because we just don't know what's going to end up happening for the overall news. Typically, I say wait 15 minutes, but if it's a speech, it could last for a full hour when it comes down to movement. If you don't feel comfortable trading today, then don't trade until the news is actually delivered and given out, and you have an idea about what's happening. Let's take a look at NYSE 100 real quick. So NYSE 100, same type of deal. We have this built out consolidation that's actually showing to happen a little bit. Yesterday, the market ended up going inside of that zone that we talked about, but I did not place a trade in because I felt like it was going back inside of that consolidation. So it was a big movement. Missed out on that opportunity, but I'm not necessarily mad because I ended up saying that I always believe that I don't want to trade inside of a box consolidation or a larger consolidation box. I would rather trade on the outside of it. So if you miss it, sometimes you just got to be okay with that. Hush. The market ends up falling down at this particular point. And once again, I would not look at considering these trades until the market actually ends up, until we actually end up getting news. There's one sale that you can be able to take. There'll be a scalp, not necessarily the greatest risk reward factor of being able to get in, but something to be able to pay attention to. I'll place it just above the swing high of this wick. It'll be basically a 1-to-1 trade if that does happen to the downside. Because of that, I probably won't look at trading NYSE because it's not from a downside move. I wouldn't be interested in being able to do an upside. Talking about being able to trade it back up to the resistance for that overall move. It's a better move to the top of this than it is to the bottom, which will end up being basically the breakout of this position all the way up to the resistance of where it was. Or you can be able to be a little bit more safer. Well, yeah, I'll probably go to the resistance of where it actually was from that previous one, which will end up being at 12,400. Stop loss on this one will end up being basically at the middle of the point of control of wherever that movement actually would end up being. But once again, risk reward factors a little bit off when it comes down to NYSE, so I probably wouldn't look at that one as the primary trade that I would look at getting into. That's just me being personal when it comes down to that. Let's take a look at DAX real quick. Uh-oh, I'm already in the live stream. Let's see chart. Okay. So German 40 end up making a huge move to the downside. Basically end up going to the top of the consolidation and then after that breaking down. I mentioned a trade that could potentially happen based off of this breakout. It ended up quickly rejecting off of that price yesterday. So it took once again a quick small loss when it came down to that movement. Once again, if I'm going to take a loss, it's going to be a very short one. I'm not necessarily interested in being able to take a full percentage loss if I see that it's going against me immensely. But that basically redefines where the resistance is going to end up being. So the trade that's going to end up being the best one will probably end up being on the outside of these overall numbers to give it a little bit more time for its overall movement. For me, that's at 13,050 for a entry point. The question would be, where would it potentially go based off of that? Simply put, the better trade when it comes down to that would be at 13,170. Stop loss will end up being when the market ends up breaking out, whatever that point of control is. Right now, I would set it up as probably 75 to 80 points, and then after that, see how the market kind of reacts based off of the U-turn, and then give it a better position. But we still have those trades that are to the downside when the market actually ends up breaking. Now we just have to set up a trade when the market ends up breaking up to the upside, and this will be the gap that we're going after right here for its overall movement. Right there, if this market ends up breaking. But currently, right now, it's in the middle of the box consolidation, so there's really no trade to be able to take overall. So, like I said, for the people that are watching this today, there's not necessarily a trade that I would be interested in being able to take at this particular point in time until the news actually ends up coming out at 9 o'clock. Obviously, we have two orders that we can be able to take a look at, and they'll be on the breakouts of each movement. Until that actually ends up happening, I am not in the market. I would not be interested in getting into the market until it actually ends up breaking out of those positions and going from there. Trading crypto is life. What's going on, big dog? Hope everything's going well with you. This one's going to end up being a short one, so let me go ahead and break down everything that I just said over the course of the last 10 minutes. Dow Jones, I'll be interested in being able to get in at 31,664 or right outside of the consolidation once after the news is placed out. Jerome Powell's going to end up speaking at 9:10. Depending on how long that ends up going, you may end up seeing that the market may end up being affected for 15 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour based off of what he's going to end up saying. Now, if it falls to the downside, we have a little bit shorter of a move that'll end up being from 13,525 all the way down to 13,420 for the overall movement. Could go a little bit lower, all the way to 388, but it'll be safer to be able to get out in that movement. DAX, there's no move to be able to take, at least not yet. We'll talk about the overall breakout position when the market can be able to get out at 13,050. Powell, whenever he talks, the market ends up moving. I mean, I don't know what the direction is going to end up being, so I'm not going to say if it's going to go up or go down. I just be ready when it comes down to pending orders, and in whatever direction it ends up taking it, then I end up writing it out once that happens.
Daddy,
or I just won't trade it. What actually happened with your trade? Which one? The one from yesterday?
Can we watch a tornado?
The US 30 trade from yesterday?
Can we watch a tornado?
No, baby. You need to put on your shirt. Put on your shirt for school. Are we talking about US 30? US 30, I took a short loss on that one. End up getting out of it when I seen it broke a small consolidation box. And then after that, matter of fact, let me show you. So two things happened. I got my money back, but I ended up losing on the trade that we talked about. Heck yeah, keep the wrist tight. So remember, we end up taking a trade based off of a counter trend line break that ended up happening right here. We end up getting in on this candlestick right here when the market actually ended up falling. Once I end up getting into that trade, I want to say 15 minutes after we end up getting out of that session, the market started to pop up and started to consolidate. Once I noticed that it started to consolidate, remember with me, my rule is as soon as it starts consolidating, you might as well go ahead and exit because you don't know what the move is going to end up being, and you reset on the trade. Well, what I end up doing when I end up exiting that trade was I end up placing in an order on the outside of this overall consolidation block. I'm actually glad that I did because I was able to catch it from 31,230 all the way up to 31,330. I didn't catch all 300 points of the move, but I caught 100 points of the move. So I got the amount that I ended up losing back off, but I didn't catch this full boat. when it came down to that movement. But yeah, I ended up taking a loss on that trade yesterday. DAX won't do anything. Nas probably won't do anything either when it comes down to the movement. The only one that I'll be focusing on is what's happening with US 30 when it comes down to the trades today. I'm sorry that I have to be able to leave out of here quickly today. I have to take my boys to school, and we're about to be late. But we'll definitely talk about it a little bit later on tonight when it comes down to that session. Please keep in mind, just box out the overall area, look for the consolidation break, and then after that, take the trade from there. You'll probably have a better chance of being able to do that compared to just guessing what the direction is going to end up being. Allow the market to be able to move it, and then after that, and run your trail stop from there. S. Gabe, 131. What's going on? I hope everything's going well with you. Everyone, thank you for being able to pop in. I do appreciate that. Click on that boost button to be able to make sure that we end up to make sure that everybody ends up seeing this. We finally ended up getting over 600 when it came down to the followers. I have to thank each and every one of y'all for being able to do that, and especially for all of the OG people and the people that keep on coming in here and watching the live chat and everything else like that. Got to make some money together, like always, and we'll definitely end up doing that. But I end up seeing y'all a little bit later on. Like always, trade your plan. Everyone, take it easy.